Hi, how are you all today? Okay. Can you all see my PowerPoint okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you have a piece of paper like this on the side of your computer, I'm going to do some dyslexia simulations today. So that'll be really nice for you to do that. Let me turn my volume off my phone. So how would your life be different today if you couldn't read? I just heard something today about people who were living before the printing press was created, had no reason to read. And all of a sudden with the Industrial Revolution, finally printing became reading was a reality, and the printing press was a new reality. So immediately 20% of the people felt they were really dumb, and they weren't, because when they had the printing press with the Industrial Revolution, they lost the dyslexic population, which is a very bright group of people, kinesthetic, our engineers, a lot of our leaders in this nation. So I equip heroic teachers with an effective literacy program to remediate dyslexia, so we can close the achievement gap, stop the school to prison pipeline, and prepare kids for success in school and in life. I'm Dr. Marianne Cintron, founder of Step by Step Dyslexia Solutions. I've been an educator for 21 years and a classroom teacher for 10. I have 2 teaching credentials, 2 master's degrees, and I believe, if kids aren't reading by 4th grade, they're at risk of dropping out of high school and going to prison. Every child has a right to read. So I didn't learn about dyslexia until I was earning my 2nd master's, and that was 4 years into my teaching career. And I had a professor who recommended I join the International Dyslexia Association, of which I'm now a board member in the Tri-County branch. You know where that is, Sam? Orange County,
Yes.
Riverside.
I do.
Yeah, so I started studying about Sam Orton and Anna Gillingham, learned that they were the pioneers of dyslexia. And I also ran into a woman who was using music with her reading program. She's no longer with us. She passed last year. She was in her 90s. But she taught me wonderful stuff about music. And she showed me how if I played classical music in the left ear and let the student read on the computer or work in a workbook or listen to spelling exercises in the right ear, they were going to make 1 to 3 year gains in only 6 weeks. And so I've been doing that ever since. I've been teaching math, but my passion is to teach language literacy. So I'm also an author of A Message of Hope, How Music Enhances Reading for Dyslexic Children. And I'm an app developer. I developed an app called Dunking Dyslexia, and I'm a curriculum writer. So with COVID, I've become an international speaker and an international teacher trainer. And I actually have my reading program in Africa and India. I've given some scholarships to some of the special ed teachers there. So I'd like you to meet my family, first of all. My husband and I have been married for 31 years. And I didn't get married till I was in my 30s. So I'll let you do the math. And so I have 3 adult children. My son is 40 because we are a blended family. So my son is 40 in his early 40s, and I have 2 kids in their 20s. And our daughter Laura just got married last year to Michael, and and Michael had a son. So another blended family is in our family. And they got married at the beautiful winery in Temecula. People from California will really appreciate that. And then they have a little doggy. So I have a grand puppy. No kids yet. So I want to thank you for taking time out of your real busy day and wanting to learn how you can help kids with dyslexia. Some of you are teachers, some of you are parents. 65.9% of students are failing to reach grade level reading by 4th grade, and they rarely catch up. So they're the ones that are at risk of dropping out of high school and going to prison. The problem is teachers aren't being trained how to recognize dyslexia. What do they do when they find those kids that have dyslexia? What if they just have those reading challenges? Teachers don't even know how to identify dyslexia. The schools aren't using their budget to train the teachers, so we have untrained teachers. And as a result, those teachers are frustrated and the kids are acting out in bad behavior. They're not going to classes, they're dropping out of high school, and sadly, some are ending up in prison and even committing suicide. And it doesn't have to be that way. So the official definition of dyslexia from the International Dyslexia Association, which took a lot of brain power to put together, dyslexia is a specific learning disability. It's neurobiological in origin, and it's characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. Now, when I was a new teacher, I wouldn't even know what that means, okay? So I have an easy way to say it. It's neurological in origin, which means the brain can be retrained. And it's not a disability, but it's a learning difference. And it affects students in their reading, writing, and speaking. So I use the acronym COPS because we have had COPS on our campuses. And Danny Trejo had his come to Jesus moment in prison. And one day I saw him on TV and he brought out a box of donuts. And I called my app Dunking Dyslexia, the app. So he's the right person here. So the C stands for crisis. We have a national reading crisis. And I know it's terrible in Canada as well, right there, Marianne? So we had mandates signed in California. Our governor, George Brown, signed a mandate October in 2015 that the schools had to assess for dyslexia and provide intervention by the 2017-18 school year. And I was a teacher at that time, and that was not being done. And I was asking my friends, and it was not being done. And I had already published my book, and nobody wanted to recognize a book on dyslexia. So let me ask you a question. How many of you ever received a C- in a class? You were so glad to get the C-, you never wanted to see that content material again? Ever? How many of you ever took a class and you got a C- and you were just so relieved to get the C- because you needed it for another progression, but as you progressed to another level, kids were just outranking you because they understood it a lot more than you? Have you ever had that feeling? So I've had both of those feelings. Our nation sees a C- as proficient. And you can imagine 2/3 of the kids are hovering way below here, and 1/3 of those are at the F range. So imagine if 2/3 are not proficient, the 1/3 that is proficient, how many of those are still struggling because they barely got that C-? So this crisis has been going on for 15 years. It's not new. So this is a picture of little Cruz. He was one of our students. He didn't even know his letter names and sounds going into 2nd grade. So his mom reached out to me. I acted as their advocate, and I trained his tutor, Teresa. He learned his letter names and sounds. Then he was able to go into our program, because when they learn their letter names and sounds, they're only learning the short vowel A sound. So once they're going into 2nd grade, or when they start our program, they start learning their other vowels. And right now he is reading at a 4th grade level and comprehending at a 5th grade level. And he is in 3rd grade now. So for those of you in the education field, I want to show you this data because people always want to see the data. Here's Cruz. This happened when he was in 2nd grade. So this past March with COVID, they exited him from reading in special ed. He was actually a homeschooled child. And his mom said that He always felt his younger sister, who was a kindergartner, was smarter than him. And his self-esteem has just skyrocketed. And his self-esteem and the knowledge he's learned because he can read now is transferring into so many areas of his life. And she calls it a miracle. She said, this just blows us away. So let me give you a first simulation, okay? If you have your piece of paper, I want you to take a look at this first stanza that I've highlighted in blue. I'm going to give you a minute to look at it and do this exercise. So this is what dyslexia feels like. I want you to look for the words that have 2 or more vowels, and then cross out the second vowel and rewrite the word. So it would look like this, okay? So I'm going to give you a minute to do that exercise. Let me find my little clock. All righty, you could start. Okay, that's 1 minute. So let me show you what it should look like. And you can see if you got these words correctly. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 9 of them here. Take a look at your paper and see if it. So this is one reason we like teachers to use highlighters, because you could highlight the words that have 2 or more vowels, and then you could take a different highlighting pen and make the changes that are required. So when kids can have different colors of pens, that's going to really be helpful. So thumbs up if you thought that was challenging. That's what the dyslexic brain is struggling with. So some of you are freezing on me, or else you just have your wonderful pictures up there. Okay, so true or false? 4th graders in Los Angeles are reading better than the national average. With all the money that we put into Los Angeles, they should be doing better, right? I know, I think that was such a silly question, but I'm thinking it's because we put so much money into it, you would expect it to be better. So the 4th graders in Los Angeles are one of the lowest in the state. In California is one of the lowest in the nation. 66, and I repeat this, 66% of students fail to reach grade level by 4th grade, and they rarely catch up. So here's a second simulation. I want to get you really engaged, because this is going to speak to your heart when you see how difficult it is for these kiddos. So this simulation, I want you to read the words in gold here. And every T, I want you to change to a D. And every E, I want you to change to an I. Okay, so what it would look like, the word there. Oh, so you're going to read in this gray area. The word there would look like THIRI. Okay, so go ahead. I'm going to give you another minute to try this exercise, and you're changing the words down here. Go ahead when you're ready. Okay, so that's a minute. You don't have to finish if you didn't, but it sure gives you a good idea of the challenge a dyslexic child or person would have. Here is what it looks like with all the changes, and you can compare what you've written. It looks like a foreign language, doesn't it? So writing is not one of the funnest things dyslexic kids can do either. I'll show you what it looks like. This is a sixth grader, and sometimes dyslexia coexists with dysgraphia. And the dysgraphia is the letters are hard to read, they're not the same size. Dysgraphia kids have a hard time putting the thoughts onto paper. There's a lot of things about dysgraphia, but I wanted to show you this. And I'm going to read these sentences to you. The clam sat on the bottom of the ocean. They rushed into the cottage in the nick of time. We gathered around the campfire and told ghost stories. Pittsfield has a population of about 50,000. A conference was held to determine the future course of action. And I would love to share this mound of donuts with my cousin and you. So you can see there were a lot of words that were omitted. So not only do dyslexic kids not punctuate, they forget to capitalize their sentences, they omit letters and syllables, and sometimes you have to ask them to read to you what they wrote, because it's really hard to read some of their writings, especially if they have dysgraphia. So there was this, okay, so I had an after-school program at a Christian school, Foothill Christian School in Glendora, and I taught the kids how to read with music. And I had about 15 students in a summer school program that was 6 weeks. And a student came from an outside district because the district wasn't helping her son read. And the mother said he's going into 6th grade and he's reading at a low 3rd grade level. And she wanted to see if he could be in the program. And of course he could. So fortunately, she was ready to sue her school district. And the awkward thing was she worked for the school district. So she was hoping that that didn't have to happen. After the 6 weeks, so I saw these kids 5 days a week for an hour a day. He made 3 years gains in reading vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. So I use protocol that's nationally normed, and I do a pre-screen and a post-screen. The assessing for screening for dyslexia with the state can be very expensive and very cumbersome, but I have managed to find a nice way to screen, and we can get a growth measurement from kids. Anyway, she didn't have to sue her district, and he went into he was still in special ed, but now when I talked to her during the next year, he was learning with the other kids, and rather than falling further and further behind. So this is what dyslexia looks like in the workplace. If kids don't get that remediation when they're young, they're going to just grow with it. Now, understand there's mild degrees and extreme degrees of dyslexia. So even if a person has a mild degree of dyslexia, it's going to show up in their job place because they can't always pick their job. This was at a nursing home. I went to visit my elderly friend with her husband, and the gal behind the register couldn't spell dollars. She didn't know how to spell dining room. She didn't know how to spell guest. And when I told her how to spell it, she corrected it, but I didn't correct more. I just asked her if she had ever been assessed for dyslexia. And she said, no, but I think I have it. And it really worried her that she thought her daughter had it as well and didn't know what to do. And if families can't pay privately, you really need to get the schools to assess for dyslexia and offer the services to your kids. So this is a 10th grader writing those same sentences, looks very similar to the 6th grader, right? So this student does have dysgraphia. And the neat thing was, by having my screening for this, he was able to take the paperwork to the school and they put him on the top of the list to get his computer. So it's one thing when the kids have trouble writing because of dysgraphia, but it's a different thing, and a typewriter is good, but it's a different thing when they just don't understand phonics and grammar rules and they can't spell. That's where the intervention needs to happen. So this little 10th grader, ready for his driver's permit here in California. We start driving at 10th grade. He scored right here cognitively. I used the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test, and he was over the top, and I look for students that are in this range when I look for the eligibility requirements for dyslexia. So then we look at a reading score. So this is why he gets overlooked. Look, he's an average reader, right? But what's happening for a 10th grader, this is his comprehension level. He is higher than a 12th grader in his comprehension. He is a bright, bright kid. And he actually has a touch of autism, which is making he's really bright. So this is the speed that he reads. This is the accuracy. So his accuracy is lower than 10th grade, 2 grade levels below. That's the second eligibility requirement for dyslexia. But averaged, he has an average score. But it only takes one score that's 2 grade levels below the cognitive score to meet that eligibility requirement. The third eligibility requirement is going to be in sounding out nonsense words and how he writes his words, his letters. So he couldn't pronounce bees, bake, kelp, peas, blut, beet, duck, moisten, and maple. So if he knew phonics, he should be able to sound those words out. And when he wrote, he learned already how to say the letter as he wrote, which is very important. And you could see, because I wouldn't really know if he's writing the right letter. So that was really smart that he did that, because I was able to grade his writing while he wrote. But look at all these errors still. These are the words he knew how to pronounce. Sometimes by the time kids are in middle school or high school, they have memorized words, because he couldn't sound out or write these other words. So the O stands for opportunities. We can provide opportunities to dyslexic children when we give an Orton-Gillingham model, which is a multisensory approach. They call it the science of reading. So we want to have the structures, we want to have systems in our reading, so the student knows what's coming next. And we want it to be cumulative. We want it to be emotionally sound, which means the student's going to feel really good about themselves because they know they're learning. So Sam Orton and Anna Gillingham were the pioneers of dyslexia back in the early 1930s, when it was called word blindedness. And then they actually spawned the International Dyslexia Association in the 1960s. So I just heard this on a YouTube this morning, that it wasn't until the printing press that dyslexia wasn't an issue, because bright people, Leonardo da Vinci was creating, dyslexic people technically can be very brilliant, good engineers, good politicians. We had Churchill, Einstein. And then when the printing press came out, suddenly they lost 20% of the population because they couldn't read. And all of a sudden, these bright people who were inventors, entrepreneurs, felt like they were dumb, and they're not. So we have Steven Spielberg has dyslexia. And down here we have some, Patricia Polacco is an author, and Erin Brockovich is an author. So imagine that. And the creativity of Walt Disney. We're sad that our Disneyland is closed here in California, but brilliant person. And we have Tim Tebow and Tom Cruise, Cher, Einstein, and Henry Winkler. So the reason the music is working with our reading program is this. It's based on the science of Dr. Roger Sperry and Gazzaniga. Imagine a dyslexic person is reading from the right side of the brain instead of the left. So the right side of the brain wants to take over the reading, and it'll send kelp instead of clap. It'll send farm instead of from, and it'll send step instead of stop. I mean, kids need to know what the right words are. And plus, when the transfer of information is going over this corpus callosum, it's slowing it down, and we have our auditory processing disorder. So when we send music in the left ear, it goes directly to the right angular gyrus. It doesn't get slowed down by the corpus callosum, and it starts strengthening the right angular gyrus. I'm sorry, it gives it a job it likes to do. Then we send the music and the spelling exercises in the right ear that are going to cross over to the left angular gyrus and strengthen it like Pilates of the brain. So your brain is a muscle and it can be strengthened. So it's based on the neuroscience of Dr. Roger Sperry, because in the 1960s, he worked with seizure patients and he severed this corpus callosum in the patients, and he worked with the left and the right sides of the brain independently. And the seizures stopped and the people were to continue to function and learn and grow. And he said then, if educators could ever take this information into the classroom, that some of these kids could get over their word blindedness. Well, teachers didn't know how to do that. In the 1960s, they were very, different for our schools. And in the 1980s, he actually won a Nobel Prize for his findings of the split brain theory. So this is a wonderful picture I like to post with the left brain functions and the right brain functions. So on the left, you have your language, math and science. If you want to take a picture with your phone, this is a great picture to have. I love having all this information. And then on the right, here's where you have creativity, imagination, music is down here. And 3D, if people are right brain strengthened, then they do well working with pictures and three-dimensional things. So true or false, put in the chat, or you could give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. 88% of the juveniles in our court system are illiterate. What do you think about that? So that is a true statement. I have a friend who works at the university here, and he is a criminal justice professor. And he said when he worked back east for the Department of Justice, there was a state that looked at the illiteracy rate of third graders to determine how many prisons to build. So P stands for prisons. Let's talk about what's going on in our prisons. 88% of the inmates are illiterate. So do we want to call that dyslexic? Most of it, yes. In special ed, we have an eligibility called specific learning disability. That could be ADHD, ADHD or dyslexic kids. 85% of kids under the specific learning disability have dyslexia. So look at the numbers we're spending. In California, we pay $42,000 for a prison inmate a year. We pay $26,000 for a special ed student every year, and we pay $13,000 every year for a general ed student. So what if we could get these kids reading in kinder, first, and second grade? And what a gift we could give those kids. And if we could get them out of special ed in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade and higher, what a better use of our taxpayer dollars. I didn't even learn about dyslexia until I was a room mom in my children's kinder and first grade. And I saw how strategically their teachers were taught to teach them reading and writing and spelling. And I knew if those teachers hadn't been trained specifically, they could have set those kids on a wrong trajectory. And so teaching with a multisensory reading program will benefit all the students, but dyslexic kids really, really need it. So true or false? Put in the chat or give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Dyslexia has been known to cause ulcers in children. That is a good thumbs up. Sadly, I laugh because I like the thumb up. I had a parent reach out to me on Facebook, and she said that her child had dyslexia and actually an dyslexia-induced ulcer. I had another parent who reached out to me on Facebook and said that her son used to lie that he had to go to the bathroom during reading time. So every time reading happened, he raised his hand to go to the bathroom. So he missed instruction, and they were really concerned about him. They thought he had a bladder infection, and visits to the doctor weekend after weekend after weekend, and nothing was wrong with him. He admitted to her 2 years later, "Mom, I just didn't want to read. I hated reading." So that's really a sad statement. So here's another simulation. I want to give you another minute. So it changes this up a little bit for you to read. Read this paragraph, or if you would call it a paragraph, and let me, you're going to have some opinions about it. And then when I show you the next slide, it's going to answer some questions for you. So go ahead and read that, and I'll give you another minute. Okay, so that's another minute. Put in the chat how that makes you feel reading this. Is it frustrating? Is it confusing? When I first read this, I was thinking, wow, what if I put bullet points to each one of those items? What is it related to? And it's hard to figure out. So here we have, oops, a picture that's going to let the student know what they're going to write about. And here is the title: Describe an experience about flying a kite. So this is all this information about flying a kite. Go ahead and read it again. Okay, so that's another minute. And you could see how much easier it is to read. It shows you the value of having a picture and having a title, not letting children leave the room when explanations are being made. And so the next letter for COPS is S. What does reading success look like in your home? Do you remember taking kids to the library? I remember taking my own kids to the library when they were little, and they would come back with a dozen books and read them over and over. It was a fun time together. And then they'd want to go back a week later or 2 weeks later and get another dozen books. Well, that's not the reality in the home of a dyslexic child. They don't want to even go near a library. In fact, when a child wants to visit grandma and grandpa and they say, let's read, hey, I thought we were going to have fun. They don't think reading is fun at all. So, and again, we weren't born with a reading brain like we were to see and hear. Reading is a man-made thing. And dyslexic children need that very specific way to read. So music is proving to help with wandering attention, and the beat of rhythm of music also lets the kids know something's coming next, and it's very helpful. I taught my 7th grade student math and let Ronnie listen to music in his left ear. He used to tell the class, I'm adopted, I have ADHD, and I have dyslexia. And he said, the Ritalin helps my ADHD, but the music helps me learn. And we had a school psychologist who was temporary at the school, but she came right in the nick of time because she wrote it into his IEP that he could listen to music during any class as long as he stayed on track and focused. And he had music written into his IEP for 8th grade and then all through high school. So Ronnie's one of our success stories with music. And people want to see what's the data. Well, after I left that private school, I had a reading program where I trained college kids to work with children who were struggling with reading in 5 low-income school districts. And so we had second language learners coming to us, but we had students from 2nd to 10th grade. We don't know if they were dyslexic or not. We just helped everybody with music and with our reading program. And we had 24 of the kids. This is just in maybe in 6 weeks. I had this over 3 years, but I just collected data for this short time. 24 were improving in comprehension. 28 were improving in oral reading quotients. At that time, when I collected this data, I never knew that 12 years later, I would be doing today what I was doing. Otherwise, I would have collected a lot more data. So one of the stories I share is about Daniela, who was an 8th grader being raised by her grandfather because her mom was in prison. And there's a genetic component to dyslexia. 40% of the dyslexic people, it's genetic, but not all of them. So her grandfather came to us as a last-ditch effort because Daniela liked music, and that's not really her name. That's just the name I gave her for my book. I talk about her in chapter 7. So after 2 weeks, because nothing was working for her, but he liked the fact that we were going to use music. After 2 weeks, he already started seeing an improvement in her self-esteem and getting along with her peers. And after 6 weeks, when I shared her post-test scores with him, she had made 3-year gains in reading vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. And her grandfather started crying. He said, this is a miracle. He said, what are you doing so differently? And I said, I'll tell you, it's the music with phonics. It really works. And he said, well, our home used to be a battlefield. And now she gets along with her peers, with us. She's enjoying going to school. She's doing her homework. She's not getting in trouble. He said, this is really a miracle. And then he asked me the question that changed my life forever. Are you a doctor? And I knew that the Lord was sending me back to school to get another degree. This time I spent 7 years getting my doctorate degree. I felt if I did research in my doctorate, people would start listening because I've taken this to schools and they've had their own curriculum and their own agenda. But now with my research, I could show them what's happening. And I'm going to show you right now. I had 30 students came to me at the 10 to 20 percentile range, right down here. Look at this, deficient, extremely low. So in my doctorate research, they required 12 weeks because 6 weeks was too short of a time. So look what happened after those 12 weeks. Half of the students used music and half didn't. So those without the music jumped from here to here. They're in the low average range. Those that use the music jumped to here in the 60 percentile range. So this is the range I look for that eligibility for dyslexia. But look at how kids who are breaking the code, music was helping them. I'm telling you, try it. If you can listen to music when you read a book or watch the news if it gets complicated, watch how it's not invasive. It just really is comforting to your brain. So kids with dyslexia can have autism, can also have ADHD, but the reading and writing is very frustrating for them. The typical classroom structure, especially with COVID online, is very hard for them. And we need to teach to their strengths as well as to their weaknesses. So I'm going to pass through this a little bit quicker. I want to share that I am in a practicum right now to get another Orton Gillingham certification, because while I have a reading program, I have a level 2 that I'm developing, and it's going to be more to the true model of Orton Gillingham. But I do not think my reading program by any means with the music should go away. It is so wonderful. So my reading program has 9 steps. We do phonogram cards. We do sound circles. We do plastic letters. We do phonics reading. We do pre-reading, which is using a whiteboard and sounds. We do a workbook. Then we do some more phonological awareness. We use a workbook again, and we then do a spelling test. So the spelling test is the culminating exercise, and people that are in my trainings get the web app for free, and it's called Dunking Dyslexia. They get it free for 2 months, but it's also available on iOS and Android. So let me show you what the 6 books look like. We have a teacher guide that has, I'm not selling my program during this webinar, but I just want you to know that the teacher guide has spelling exercises. It has the phonics that the student reads for 10 minutes. It has teacher instructions. So new teachers and veteran teachers can also follow it. And then we have mini lessons, which are grammar and phonics rules that we explicitly teach. And we teach about, the syllable types. We teach why the C and the G have a hard and a soft sound. Stuff like that. Why J and DGE both say J, and then GE says J. So then we have Blackline Masters, which means you can copy, and I give these files digitally as well. So you can add more students if you want to tutor online as well. We have a junior workbook, a senior workbook, and a senior workbook also has a second book. So this is what the phonogram cards look like. We would say, we always have a concept picture. So we would say A, X, A. That's how the kids learn the sounds, A, X, A. And they would do E, whatever. So every letter has its own card. And I like to teach the CH and the TCH together because they say the same sound. And we just teach that the ch, this is ch, but the T is protecting a short vowel sound. So kids get really excited because they're only in 2nd grade, but they do Halloween and they hear the word witch. And now they know why the T is in there for witch. Or they get their watches and now they know why a T is in there for watch. And some of the Orton Gillingham models might separate teaching these, might teach TCH way down the road. Well, I like teaching it right up front because that's how I was trained. And what I've learned by being in a practicum is that people will create their own reading programs in a way that makes sense to them. There is a true Orton Gillingham model, but they're still going to be true to what works best for them. And I have a quick little story. The young girl was making a pot roast and she cut the ends off her pot roast. And she asked her mom, why do we cut the ends off the pot roast? And her mom says, I do it because my mom did it. And so the little girl said, oh, I'm going to ask Grammy. So she said, Grammy, why did you cut the ends off your pot roast? And the grandma said, well, I did it because my mother did it. So the great grandmother was still alive. So the young girl asked the great grandmother, she called her Grammy again. Why did you cut the ends off your pot roast? And the great grandmother said, well, because my pan was too small. So there you have it. People do things and patterns are repeated until you realize it doesn't need to be that way. I think it makes sense to do it this way. And so that's why I love my reading program using the music. So I will teach, ED has 3 sounds, and Orton Gillingham might teach the duh, it has 3 sounds, and spread all those sounds out. When letters have multiple sounds, the model is to spread them all out, but I like to teach them together. And also repetition. The kids need repetition anyway. So when I go to my level 2, if they still haven't learned these concepts, this is where I would teach it more rigidly and separate everything out. So I have 101 phonogram cards, 101 key concept cards, or the pictures to match those sounds. We use sound circles, and we pull a sound down for every, circle down for every sound. We always want to say the word like Doug, tap out the sounds, d, g, Doug. And then we want to pull the circles down representing that sound. That's step 2. And then sometimes we'll bring out our unifix cubes because that helps with the visualization. If you have 2 vowels together, like AY, we're going to stack those red cubes because it's one sound. 2 cubes, 1 sound. Or if you have SH where it says shh, we're going to have 2 circles stacked or 2 unifix cubes stacked up. So we have those kind of scaffolds that I teach in my program. And I personally sprayed all my vowels black, and I spray the C and the G silver because I have a lot of fun teaching these C's and the G's. And we put the plastic letters in front of the vowel, after the vowel, in front of the vowel, after the vowel. This is a drill that the students do for the first couple of weeks. So this would be pa, ap, pa, ep, p, ip, pa, up, pa, up. And that the kids love it. And if they struggle with it, we can do the same sounds up to 3 days, and then we move on. This is a fun picture that just kind of shows the B and the D, is so confusing for kids. It's a lot of dyslexic kids get reversals, but just having reversals doesn't mean the kid's dyslexic. So true or false, dyslexic people have low intelligence. Correct. We did a lot of examples of that. They are not low in their intelligence. And often their teachers have said they're lazy, they're not trying hard enough. The thing is, dyslexic people are very creative, are engineers, they're managers, they're artistic, they're entrepreneurs, great with the music, dancing, and the arts. So we read in the teacher guide has the phonics right here. And in the phonics, this is where we have the student listen to the music in the left ear, and the student reads, whether you're next to the student or whether it's online. But we substitute out different vowels. And then sometimes we'll just swap beginning, ending sounds. These are great auditory and visual drills. And when they have the music in their ear, they actually will read for 10 minutes. You won't get that with the true Orton Gillingham model because everything is changing up pretty regularly and there's not time for the kid to listen to the music. So this 9-step program is really the opportunity to start using music to learn. Then we have, for step 5, we have our first phonological drill. We have the student repeat the word after us. So say hat, hat. Let's tap out the sounds. Some kids will want to go huh, t. And then we say, okay, what sound does the H make? What sound does the T make? What sound does the letter A make? What letter says huh? What letter, and you might say, what letter name says t? What letter says a? Okay, say hat, and then say hat again, but instead of the huh, put a and they'll say mat. So when I have you in the training, I teach how we write the words from the spelling list on these index cards. Makes it so easy to teach and to plan. You know, I love the Orton Gillingham, but it takes me about 2.5 hours to plan a lesson. Whereas with my reading program, it takes 15 minutes to plan what you're going to do the next day. And we all need to save some time. So the junior workbook has phonics rules, very fun and engaging. The senior workbook goes up to 96 pages, but the beginning 36 pages are the same. The junior workbook would be for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. It's got larger font. And first graders have used the junior workbook, but more with oral exercise. We don't have them write in there. And then step 7, all this is scripted. We do another phonological awareness, but now we're just asking the student to say the word, tap it out. And what's the beginning sound of Doug? What's the ending sound of Doug? What's the middle sound? So they're really learning beginning, ending, middle sound. And there are many other programs that will help you with substitutions of sounds if you want to research your own. I'm being given some of those in my practicum, which are wonderful, but this does the job. So then we have workbook 2, which covers more grammar and phonics, more grammar rules. We have mini lessons, which cover the grammar rules. We teach with a slingshot about the C and the G. I say the 3 stones are the E, I, and the Y. And when they shoot the G and the C, they make the soft sound. Kids love it. And so you can alternate mini lessons. I'm going to skip through this really quick because we're getting to the end of our hour. But step 9 is when you use the music app on your phone. We have 28 spelling exercises and 8 sentence groups because you'll have dyslexic kids that are mild or extreme. And if they have that mild case, they're going to be up to being challenged with the spelling, the sentences. So what I'm offering is an affordable alternative. I want to play
Dr. Marianne, she just is amazing and just such a support. And the work that she's doing in step by step is just been amazing because there's so much sacrifice in this work. There's so much that has been poured into this work. There's so much, intent that has been put in to make sure that something can be delivered at a quality level for all of our kids and communities near and far. So I just don't want to, negate the opportunity to be able to edify her in the work that she does. The same person you see in these 15 minutes that is passionate about the program is the same person who assesses the kids, tutors, teaches tutors, teachers teachers, just all that's the same person, right? It's the same love and passion. And the thing that you mentioned at the beginning, that you empower and encourage, I think is so powerful because I think it speaks to who you are as a person, and that's the part that people should connect to, and that's the part that people should realize needs the sponsoring and the support to continue this work in the world. So continue to do an amazing job. I stand for you, and I just support you as much as we can. Dr.
So that was the intro of one of my podcasts. I just thought I wanted to share it. So can I share with you about my boot camp coming up the end of February? Is that okay if I share with you? So my boot camp is for anybody interested in helping tutor kids, dyslexic kids. They could be college interns, parents, teachers, paraprofessionals. And you're going to learn how to demonstrate your understanding of Orton Gillingham and the steps for teaching structured literacy. You'll understand and be able to explain portions of my 9-step program. I can't show them all, but I will show many of them. You'll be able to recognize dyslexia in the classroom and know how to teach phonological awareness. And you'll be able to understand and describe dyslexia to others. You may even get a raise at your current job. You'll be able to help more kids instead of just one because you're going to share your knowledge with many, possibly keep kids out of prison as well. I'm only allowing 6 people in this boot camp. So it's called Learn the 4 C's to Embracing Dyslexia. The first card is going to be about phonogram. The first C is Phonogram Cards. I'm going to show you how we teach Phonogram Cards. And I'm also going to give them to you as a gift in the small deck of card size if you sign up. And here I also want to show you that it's only going to cost $47 for 4 sessions. It's starting February 25th, but then included in that are 3 more sessions, 3 days in March, the 4th, 11th, and 18th. I'm going to put that link in the chat. And so if you sign up within the next 15 minutes, I'm going to also give you my first 2 training videos valued at $197. The first video, Jumpstart Your Road to Success, will go through all the materials. It'll show you the teacher binder, the phonics drills, spelling exercises. And the second video training is the winning tools in your toolbox. You'll see how I train with an I do, we do model. And then the next video would be the you do model. So here are some of the others. I know we're getting to the end, but you're guaranteed to understand phonics. And again, your tuition is only $47. This is the link. I have it on my Facebook page, but it's the Dyslexia Bootcamp, and it's 3NPR5VX. PN, and I will put that in the chat. So I want to be respectful of your time with me. If you're allowed to save the chat. Let me put it here. Stop my share. That way I can enter in the chat. So save your chat with these 3 dots, and then you could download it and make your reservation. Okay, I don't have time for questions, but I invite you to email me any questions you have. I want to thank you so much for spending time, Sam and Marianne and Steffi. Stephanie, thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing from you.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye now.